Italy and America. How do I compare thee? Let me count the ways. Ciao tutti and greetings from Connecticut. So I'm here visiting friends and family, and I thought, what better opportunity to make this type of video? This seems to be a popular type of video on my channel, so I thought, let's do another one. Before we get started, I feel I should mention that whenever I do these types of videos, that it's important to remember that this is just one guy's opinion. This is my perception on reality and my perception on the reality between both countries. So take it with a grain of salt. Okay, iniziamo. The first thing that just jumps right at me whenever I come back here, and it gets worse every single year, is that this country is getting so expensive. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong, the cost of living is also increasing in Italy. However, I feel that when I come back here, it's just a bit more dramatic. I mean, I just feel that it's much more expensive here. It should be mentioned that the salaries are higher here. Yes, that is true. But the general consensus that I get from friends and family is just one of, wow, this is expensive even for us. Since I know a lot of you are probably foodies, don't worry. There is a food section in this video, but I'll get to that a bit later. One of the most obvious examples of things being too expensive in this country is the Red Sox game that I went to a couple days ago. My God, that was a small investment. I couldn't believe how much things cost. Granted, when you go to a professional sports match, you are always going to spend more in general. However, the last game I went to was 11 years ago, and I noticed a distinct difference between the game I went to now and 11 years ago. It wasn't that expensive before, no. So the tickets were, with tax, $176. And then I remember I bought a beer for me and a beer for my cousin, and that came out to be $25. Yikes. Sorry, that was a little off topic, I know. However, I do want to talk about two things which are cheaper in Italy than here, and the first one are cell phones. Honestly, I'm not really sure why they cost less in Italy than here. So for example, I pay €7 a month, and I get 80 giga, how do you pronounce it? Gig, whatever, you get me. And then I have unlimited everything, and so for me, that's more than enough. And then the other day, I looked at my mother's plan. I don't know what she has. She's got more than enough, but she pays $60 just for her line. Wow. The other one that I want to compare are daycares. Now, in Rome, we pay €400 per month for our daughter. Now, I'm not saying this is the national average. I'm sure that there are other daycares which charge more, and I think also you can pay less if you go to a state-run daycare. We choose to go private. Now, here in the U.S., I still have plenty of friends who either have young children or who had young children. The best comparison they told me is that paying daycare now is like you're paying a second mortgage. I really can't recall how much they're paying, but from what I gather, they seem to be paying over $1,000 a month, or they could potentially pay over $1,000 a month. Unfortunately, this is a cost that you simply have to deal with because I think there are a lot of people who work full-time, maybe their family and friends aren't close by, and so you really do need daycare, so you have to find a way to afford it. But anyway, let's move on to something which for me is even a bit slightly comical, and those are street signs. More specifically, the signs that you look at when you're driving. Unfortunately, I have not been to all 50 states, and I have not been to all the regions in Italy, but I have traveled extensively in both countries, and I must say, as far as street signs are concerned, now I'm not saying that street signs and signs to tell you where you're going when you're driving are absolutely flawless in the United States. No, of course not. However, my own wife has told me that we Italians do not know how to properly put up a sign or help a person get where they're going via the signage. Short story. So they were driving me to the airport in Catania about 3 weeks ago, and we were in this rotary, and we had to circle it twice because we couldn't figure out where we had to get off. So coming around again, we decided to turn right instead of left. Right after we turned, we saw the sign for Catania Airport. Well, thank you very much. That would have been much more helpful before we actually turned. I would like to say, though, that when you are driving on the highways in Italy, the major highways, those signs are pretty good. And if I've gotten lost, it was because I was distracted. That's it. While we're on the subject of driving, I simply must mention something that I mentioned in a previous video, and I have to say it again because it just really pisses me off. At least here in New England, one thing that I don't see are cars that slowly drift into another person's lane. Does it happen? Oh, sure, I'm sure it does. But a better example would be at a stoplight. So here, one thing that I just don't see, that I always see constantly in Rome, is that cars stay in their lanes. Like when they approach the light, they make sure that they're in the correct lane. Whereas in Rome, I see cars that are constantly like overlapping lanes. Like it's not uncommon to see somebody come to a stop and they're half in one lane and half in the other, or maybe one of their tires is in my lane. Well, that's annoying. I'm sorry. I am just so much more relaxed when I drive here. There's just no comparison. I mean, I'm not tense. I'm not worried about somebody colliding into me. And the tailgating here compared to Rome, there just is no comparison. No. Yeah, I always say it, but I think that this is one of the things that I miss most in the United States. Driving on decent roads, I can only speak for Connecticut, and just not feeling apprehensive when I drive. Here in America, if you want to make a right turn on red, you can, whereas in Italy, you can't. To this day, I don't know why you can't do that in Italy, because I think it's possible to do it safely here. Oh my God, they're killing me with the air conditioning. So anyway, this is a ShopRite, and I worked here literally 15 years ago, and it used to be called Price Chopper. But every time I go into a grocery store or any kind of public place, I'm cold. So if you come here to the USA in the summer months, bring a jacket. Seriously, it does get too cold sometimes. You are from here. This is where you grew up. In essence, you're home. I've been here for about a week and a half, and it's still somewhat strange to say that. I don't know, I guess living 14 years in a different country will do that. There is, however, some degree of truth to that, because as I look out at all this green here, the forest, the trees, the grass, this does represent me, you know, and I am grateful to have grown up in this place. I didn't quite appreciate that when I was younger, especially in my 20s. But coming back here as an adult, and especially now that I have a family, your perspective changes a lot. And so I would say that these trees are definitely a part of me. What does that mean for my daughter? Well, I will have to just expose her to places like this as much as possible while living in a big city. Wish me luck. The next one that I'd like to talk about is probably something that you're not expecting, and this is wet hair. Now, if you're from New England or just any other state where it gets really, really cold, Minnesota, for example, then you'll know what I'm talking about. So when I was in high school, I always saw girls on the bus and when they got to school with icicles for hair. Why? Because they take a shower in the morning and then they just go out with wet hair. The reason why you don't see this in Italy is that Italians will never go outside with wet hair. And the reason why is because they believe that if it's cold or if it's windy, for example, then they believe that this can have a negative effect on their health. Is that true? Is that an old wives' tale? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but personally, it's normal here. And I just don't believe that you can really get sick if you go outside with wet hair. I don't. Next, let's talk about malls. Now, people say that malls are dying here in the United States. In my visit here, I have gone to two malls. One is called the Buckland Hills Mall, which is in Manchester, Connecticut, and the other one is called the West Farms Mall, which is on the Newington-Farmington line, I think. Now, granted, maybe I wasn't there at the right time, but in both malls, I can remember when the malls were much more crowded when I was a kid, and they did seem pretty desolate, so yeah. I actually prefer going to the malls in Italy because they're much more alive. People still go there, and I think it will take a long time for them to die down like here in the United States, if they ever do. So a couple months ago, I went to one of the malls in Rome, which is called Maximo. Very nice. We went on a Sunday afternoon, and I could not get a parking spot. It was just absolutely impossible. I'm not kidding. That raises the question, why do Italians like going to the malls and Americans don't? I think it's a cultural thing, partially. And the reason why is because the mall for the Italians is a great place to go and meet up with your friends, to meet up for maybe a bite to eat. And also, I think Italians prefer to window shop, to actually be in the place and touch a product physically, especially clothing. For that reason, I don't think a lot of Italians buy clothing online. And the proof is my students. Very often throughout the years, I've asked them where they prefer to go shopping. And they always tell me, we prefer to go to a shop in the center of town or go to a mall. Our next topic are coffee bars. So in my opinion, if you want to take your laptop or if you want to just go somewhere quiet and read a book and have a coffee, I think it tends to be a bit easier in this country than in Italy. Tends to be a bit easier. That's the key word here. I can't speak for both countries. I'm not the ambassador. No. Maybe one day. I don't know. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're enjoying this video, then do make sure you give me a like. That'd be cool. Andiamo avanti. Okay, I'm not going to keep you in suspense any longer. Let's talk about the food. To no one's surprise, I prefer eating in Italy. I mean, you probably could have predicted that. But why? Well, there are many reasons. I think Italy has a distinct culinary culture. With that, there are expectations. Expectations in the sense that people expect a certain quality, and if you don't deliver on that quality, then you might be out of business. Make no mistake, though, I have had bad culinary experiences in Italy. These are restaurants who maybe don't focus on the quality as much as they should, cut corners, or just simply aren't very good cooks. There's also supermarkets who aren't top notch like some others. Like, for example, I prefer to go to one supermarket over another when I buy fish and meat. Can you eat well here in the United States? And is it possible to find good quality food, good quality healthy food? Sure. I feel, however, that this is more difficult here. Let me share with you a short story which somewhat illustrates the point, I hope. My sister picked me up from the airport about 2 weeks ago, and we stopped along the Mass Pike because I was hungry, okay? It was late, though. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And there are several restaurants in this place. Unfortunately, the only one available was McDonald's and the convenience store. So I didn't want to stop at McDonald's. They have salads, yeah, okay, but I just didn't feel like trying it. So unfortunately, I was forced to rely on whatever was in the convenience store. Fortunately, I was able to find some fruit, so that's fine. Here in the USA, and by the way, I like saying that because normally I'm in Italy and I can't say that here in the USA. But anyway, in this country, I just feel like there is this collective push. There's just this pressure on us to eat more and to eat unhealthy, and it's just all around us. Like I just mentioned in my story about having to eat whatever was around me on the Mass Pike off the highway, I think the same goes for many situations here. When you're in a pinch, when you're hungry, and you have to rely on the food around you, I just feel like it's just not the best. And very often it's unhealthy and fattening. It doesn't get much better when you go to the grocery stores. And I know because I used to work in 2 grocery stores here. In particular, I can recall setting up the end displays. And very often, not always, but very often, the food is just unhealthy. And so, it's right in your face. And when there's a special for buy two, get three free, for example, sometimes it's hard to resist. We also have a huge variety. And this brings up a funny story. So the first time my wife came here was about 5 years ago. I took her to Big Y, and we were in this aisle, and it was full of sauces. And she said, what are these sauces for? Are these different sauces for different things? I says, no, dear, these are all for salads. Okay, I confess, I do miss the variety in cereal here in the United States. I like seeing half an aisle dedicated to just cereal. On the topic of supermarkets, there's something that I see here that I don't like that is not done in Italy. So, when you walk past the fruit and produce section, and in particular the apples are always shiny, and to me that's just not natural. And I have to wonder if they add something which gives it that shine. Yeah, just to be safe, every time I've eaten an apple here, I've done it the Italian way. I just peel the skin. Something that I do miss from this country are the automatic refills. And the two beverages that come to mind are, well, actually three. This would be water, coffee, and soda. Unheard of in Italy. Be careful though, because if you ask for water in this country, very often they will give you ice water. Now, I will admit that when it's 100 degrees out, a bit of ice water can be kind of refreshing. However, I think that for digestion, it's better if you drink water at room temperature. On the topic of water, there is something that I wish they had in Italy that are in abundance here, and that I always grew up with them. And these are water fountains. There are water fountains in Italy, but just not the same as we have them here. Here's an example. So the first time I went to my gym here in Rome, I wanted to get some water. Like I wanted to refill my water bottle. So I asked one of the trainers where the water fountain was. He looked at me like I had 3 heads. And for me, it was just a perfectly natural question. And he said, well, if you go to the bathroom, maybe you can fill up in the tap. It wouldn't happen here. No. Okay, so for this week's expression, I think it is proper to teach you an expression which loosely translated means don't generalize. So they say it in this way, and I always forget how to say it. Here we go. Non si può fare di tutta l'erba un fascio. Quite simply and literally, it means don't lump all your grass together in one bundle. Do make sure you keep watching because eventually I would like to put out a video and this will feature a very special guest and we're going to be talking about something which should apply to a lot of you. You'll see. Oh yes, the glasses. Now, I'm not going blind, but my eye doctor recommended that I started wearing glasses because I spend a lot of time in front of my cell phone, my computer, and so this is just for protection. Like always, grazie mille per l'attenzione. Ci vediamo alla prossima. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.